Hey guys, this video is for week 9 Thursday. So this assignment is still dealing with By the Waters of Babylon, and this video this assignment in particular is probably going to take us a couple of days. So don't be surprised if you see it show up on the Monday side as well. Let's get started. So we have worked with By the Waters of Babylon, looking at mood, how the reader feels, and we've looked at tone, how the speaker feels. Today, let's look at how figurative language plays into that. So you guys have done figurative language before in elementary school and at middle school, but we are going to look at how it affects the tone or the mood of a passage. Figurative language should be pretty familiar with you, so this should probably just be a refresher. We use figurative language to help our readers visualize or mentally picture what's happening in the story. This allows the writer to go away from conventional and direct writing into more creative, complex, imaginative meanings. So figurative language helps create these really vivid, wonderfully rich meanings in a story. So you have lots of examples of figurative language, but today we are just going to look at these three: metaphors, similes, and personification. Now, I know that you have had practice with these, so you probably are old pros with them, but let's look at them for a reminder. So a metaphor is a comparison of two unlike things without the use of the words like or as. So if we take these two things that are being compared, they're incredibly different when they're broken apart, but bringing them together creates a whole new meaning for you. And remember, you do not have the words like or as. So I've given you some examples here. The snow is a white blanket covering the ground. Well, what am I comparing? I'm comparing snow, which is a type of precipitation, to a white blanket, and that just means that it's covering absolutely everything. The bell at the end of the day is music to my ears. Isn't that true? I'm comparing a bell at school to music to my ears. Notice that in both of these, I don't use like or as. Now, a simile does the same thing as a metaphor, but this time you do have the use of like or as. My little sister crept into my room as quiet as a mouse. Well, I'm comparing my little sister to a quiet mouse using the words as. My dad was as angry as a grizzly bear when my brother broke the television. Now I'm comparing my dad to an angry grizzly bear. Again, I'm still using the word as. And if you've ever felt like you get a metaphor and simile mixed up, I'll give you a little trick that I like to use. It sounds so silly, but I promise it works. The word like and the word simile, they each have the letter L in it. And that's how I know it belongs to, the words like or as belong to a simile. So silly, but I promise it works for me every time. And lastly, we have personification. So personification is when we give an inanimate or a non-human thing human capabilities. And this often gives this idea that this item, this thing, has performed an action that in reality it hasn't, because we're making it sound like a human even though it's not. So let's look at these examples. The winds hammered against the door, threatening to barge in. Well, I know a wind can't hammer, it can't pound on the door, and it can't make a threat. So this just means that the wind is incredibly powerful, and it feels like it's going to come through the door at any moment. The sun kissed the baby's cheeks as it played on its blanket. Well, we know a sun can't kiss somebody like people can. It just means that the sun was incredibly warm against the baby's skin. So I'm going to give you several quotes from the passage that we've been studying for By the Waters of Babylon. We're going to read it, and then I want you to identify the figurative language in this line right here. Okay, you have got 3 pieces of figurative language that you are going to use. After you've identified that, I want you to fill in this sentence, fill in the blanks to identify the comparisons, and discuss the effect of that device. Don't use the word foreboding in this. We came up with several words that might make us feel a sense of foreboding, or that might make the speaker feel foreboding. So you can use some of the words that we've discussed earlier. So words like powerlessness, fear, anxiety, or any other synonyms where that's appropriate. I'm actually going to take us out of present mode because if you are Ms. Robertson's class, you are working in Google Slides, and you'll just tap into this text box so that you can answer. If you're one of my kids, we're in Cami, and you can just create your text box. Okay. Never have I been so much alone. I tried to think of my knowledge, but it was a squirrel's heap of winter nuts. So what is the figurative language being used here? Well, what's drawing my attention is he's thinking of his knowledge and then comparing it to a squirrel's heap of winter nuts. So he's saying my knowledge is a squirrel's heap of winter nuts. Well, those are two very different things. So I'm comparing them, but notice I didn't use the word like or as. So which one of these would that be? That's right, metaphor. So you would type the word metaphor here. And then let's look at our sentence. Let's just look at what the sentence is asking, and then we can start to piece it together. Comparing the speaker's blank to blank shows the speaker's what? The way the speaker is feeling, show the tone, because, and then we need to give our explanation. So comparing the speaker's knowledge to a squirrel's heap of winter nuts shows the speaker's what? What is the tone of this sentence? How are they feeling? So comparing the speaker's knowledge to a squirrel's heap of winter nuts maybe shows the speaker's powerlessness. Fear and anxiety could work there too, but I think powerlessness would probably be best because why? Why is the speaker feeling powerless with his knowledge? Well, let's talk about what he means by a squirrel's heap of winter nuts. He's talking about how he feels so alone on the river. This river is incredibly powerful. It's taking over. He doesn't know how to manage it. And a squirrel's heap of winter nuts might not actually be all that much. It might not be enough to get him through this scenario. So he's feeling like his knowledge is very limited right now. Comparing the speaker's knowledge to a squirrel's heap of winter nuts shows the speaker's powerlessness because he feels very limited in his knowledge while navigating the river. You decide. You fill in the sentence. Here's another. Alone upon the great river, the servant of the gods. Now, this is just a small clip of a sentence. This is not even the whole thing. So this is all we need to focus on. What is the figurative language being used? Well, the focus is on the river. And notice this comma following it, and it says the servant of the gods. This is an appositive phrase. And appositive renames what came before it. So the river is a what? A servant of the gods. Well, that's incredibly strange because a river is a thing and a servant is a person. So it sounds like they're using personification here. Identifying the river as a servant of the gods makes the river seem what? Does it make the river seem like a powerful person? And then tell me why. Because what? Identifying the great river as a servant of the gods makes the river seem like a powerful person because you fill in the blank. I felt small and naked as a new hatched bird. What is the figurative language being used here? Well, the focus is on I. I felt what? Small and naked as a new hatched bird. Comparing the speaker to a new hatched bird illustrates his what? What is the tone here? How is he feeling? Well, a new hatched bird is a baby bird. And again, they are incredibly powerless. I mean, they are dependent upon their mother to get them where they need to go, to give them food, to give them shelter. So if you feel like a baby bird, you feel powerless. You feel helpless. You can use the word helpless. Comparing the speaker to a new hatched bird illustrates his powerlessness, helplessness, because why does he feel powerless or helpless? The current of the great river is very strong. It gripped my raft with its hands. What's the figurative language being used here? Well, again, the focus is on the river, and it says it's very strong. There's nothing strange about that. But then it says it gripped my raft with its hands. Well, when we grip something, we've got something in our grasp and we're clutching it. Like make a fist or hold something incredibly hard. A river doesn't really do that. So that's another example of personification. By giving the river current the ability to grip the raft, the river seems to be what? This adds to the speaker's sense of foreboding. Why? When you grip something, typically it's because we're feeling very anxious, we're wanting to maintain our hold on it. You don't grip something when you feel relaxed. So how does this add to the sense of foreboding that he feels that his raft is being gripped by the river? Okay. So now let's look at language. Language is the entire body of the words used in a text. It's not just little isolated bits of diction, like word choice. Now, all of these words qualify how the work is written, not the attitude or the tone. Now, like diction, word choice, the language of the passage has control over the tone. And remember, tone is how the speaker or the writer feels their attitude. So we are still using the same passage that we've used this whole time, and you're going to highlight all of the words below that we could use to describe the language of this passage, okay? I have given you a link to a dictionary so that you can look up any words that you're unsure of. Let's reread the passage very quickly. All the same, when I came to the place of the gods, I was afraid. The current of the great river is very strong. It gripped my raft with its hands. That was magic, for the river itself is wide and calm. I could feel evil spirits about me in the bright morning. I could feel their breath on my neck as I was swept down the stream. Never have I been so much alone. I tried to think of my knowledge, but it was a squirrel's heap of winter nuts. There was no strength in my knowledge anymore, and I felt small and naked as a new-hatched bird, alone upon the great river, the servant of the gods. So, let's talk about the language in this text. So remember, the language is all of the words, not just a few of them. We're looking at the whole thing. How can we describe the language, all of the words that are being used here? So we know that plain means that it's incredibly clear spoken. It's direct. Ordinary, you know what ordinary means, normal. Okay, symbolic is figurative language. I think that this paragraph is incredibly symbolic because you've had metaphors, similes, personification just in this paragraph. Now, when you are ready to highlight, all you need to do is double click the word if you are in Ms. Robertson's class and go up here to the toolbar, select highlight, yellow. Now, if you are in mine and you're working with Cami, you know that your toolbar is vertical and it runs the left side of the page. So a literal definition or a literal meaning means that it's very direct. There is no figurative language. I don't feel like that's the best term to choose, especially since we just chose symbolic. Learned means that the words are very knowledgeable, educated. And cultured is much the same way. Cultured means that you have knowledge of the world. Detached means that you have removed yourself from the situation. You're speaking about it very clinically. It doesn't feel personal. Figurative is a lot like symbolic. You've got all this figurative language. You have these pieces of imagery that create more vivid meaning. So, figurative. Now, I'm not going to go through and highlight all the words that we could use to describe it, just a few of them for you, and then you can figure out the rest. So we have the word lyrical, colloquial, simple, esoteric, pretentious, concrete, and emotional. We have a few other words in here that would be perfect to describe the language of this passage. I've done 2 of them with you. I'm going to let you find a few more. Remember to do that. Okay, so if you need to look up the definition of these, remember, click on this link here. Okay, so we are still working with language. Remember, language is the entire body of the text, how it comes across. Here, look at number 17. Select one of the words that you chose and justify your answer. So I want you to tell me, explain why you picked this word and why you think it's appropriate. In what way or ways does the language contribute to the foreboding tone? So look at the words that you highlighted. If you need to go to the other page to do that, you can. And I want you to think and then explain to me, how do these words make how does this language make it feel like it is this foreboding tone that something bad is about to happen? So you might reference how the figurative and symbolic nature of the paragraph shows or makes a foreboding tone because it portrays the speaker, John, as helpless and powerless. Okay, sentence structure. So sentence structure is the physical nature of the sentence, which means this is how the words are presented on paper. This is what the sentence looks like. So we are going to be talking about these 2 terms here. Let's look at them. You have what's called a periodic sentence. And a periodic sentence starts with a dependent clause. A dependent clause means it is a section of the sentence that cannot stand on its own. It is not a complete thought. After your dependent clause, you're going to have a comma, and then you're going to have the independent clause second. An independent clause is just what it sounds like. It's independent. It has a subject, it has a verb, it's a complete thought, it can stand on its own. It's a complete sentence. Now the main idea, the independent clause, is revealed at the end of the sentence with a periodic sentence. Let's look at this example. After studying all night, this right here is the dependent clause. Notice that it cannot stand on its own. After studying all night, what? That's not a complete thought. After studying all night, comma, Megan confidently turned in her test. Megan confidently turned in her test is the independent clause. This is the main idea of the sentence. Notice how it is second. It comes after the dependent clause. Now, a cumulative sentence is just the opposite. In a cumulative sentence, the independent clause is first, and then it has any subordinate elements. The phrases, the clauses come second. So again, the main idea is first, and the details follow. She turned in her test. That's an independent clause. You have your subject she, you have your verb turned, so you've got your complete sentence here. She turned in her test, comma, confident she aced it after studying all night. If I just look at this portion right here, confident she aced it after studying all night, this is a dependent clause because it doesn't say it doesn't say she was confident she aced it after studying all night. So this is dependent. Your independent is in the beginning. So let's recap it. Periodic sentence, your independent clause is second. In a cumulative, it's first. So number 19, highlight the independent clause in the following sentence. All the same, when I came to the place of the gods, I was afraid. So we need to find the independent clause, the part of the sentence that has your subject and your predicate, and it can stand on its own. Let's look at it piece by piece. All the same. That's not an independent clause. There's no subject, there's no predicate here, so ignore this. When I came to the place of the gods. Well, even though it says I, and then it has the verb came, this is a dependent clause because it starts with this interrogative pronoun when. When I came to the place of the gods, what? What happened? This is an incomplete thought, so this is not independent clause. I was afraid. So who's your subject? I. What's your predicate? Was. I was what? afraid. This portion right here can stand all on its own, so we need to highlight this as the independent clause. Now, in the past, we have told you guys what colors to use. For today's lesson, it does not matter what color highlighter you choose. Just don't pick blue because it would blend in, so yellow. Now, is this a periodic or cumulative sentence? Where's the independent clause? If it's first, it's cumulative. If it's second, it's periodic. So you decide. How does the sentence structure contribute to the tone? Remember, we have this foreboding tone that something bad is about to happen. So here, all the same, when I came to the place of the gods, I was afraid. So the fact that the speaker has a periodic sentence, hint, hint for the previous question, you have all of this build-up, this suspense in the beginning of the sentence. All the same, when I came to the place of the gods, it just sounds like you've got this build-up. You don't know what's happened yet. You don't know how the speaker's feeling. It's very tense because you've got the dependent clause at the beginning. And what's the effect of the repetition of the word afraid? Well, you know repetition means that it's repeated. You can see that he uses the word afraid twice. Why does he do that? What is he trying to emphasize? What is he stressing? It sounds to me like he's really trying to emphasize the terror that he is feeling, the powerlessness. Parallel structure. So parallel structure means that the pattern of your words are following the same pattern. Okay, so let's look at some examples. So here I've given you a sentence that is not parallel, followed by two corrections that you could use. Clara likes swimming, the rodeo, and to play volleyball. Notice that swimming ends in ing, but then you've got the rodeo and then to play volleyball. Parallel means that we need to make them follow the same consistent pattern. So you could change it in a couple of ways. Clara likes swimming, attending the rodeo, and playing volleyball. Notice that we have added ing to these other words. Or you could say Clara likes to swim, attend the rodeo, and play volleyball. So again, we have the same pattern of words. Now it's just swim, attend, play. Number 23, highlight the sentence that includes parallel structure. I'm not going to reread the paragraph with you. If you need to hear it again, you can go back in the video. And then once we highlight it, we need to discuss how does the parallel structure contribute to the tone. So let's look down here where it says I could. I could feel the evil spirits about me in the bright morning. I could feel their breath on my neck as I was swept down the stream. Notice that he says in both of these, I could feel evil spirits, I could feel their breath. He doesn't go from saying I could feel to I am feeling or I felt. He keeps that same pattern of thought. And how does this contribute to this foreboding tone? I could feel the evil spirits about me. I could feel their breath on my neck. Well, both of these sentences have this eeriness, this presence that someone is there. The next thing that we have is called the dash. So a parenthetical expression is a word or a phrase that breaks into the main thought of a sentence. It's an interruption into your thought. Parenthetical expressions usually are set off with commas or parentheses, but sometimes it's so strong and it needs much stronger emphasis that we use a dash. The dash indicates that there's this abrupt break in your thought or speech. Again, it's a sudden interruption and it's incredibly strong feeling. The right thing to do, I know it'll be hard, is to apologize. Now notice you've got this dash here. Now, because of the font that I chose, it's given 2, but yours won't look like that. The right thing to do, I know it'll be hard, is to apologize. The I know it'll be hard is a parenthetical expression. It's interrupting the thought. So here, let's find our dashes. I can see it here, here, and at the very bottom, let's read these sentences. The current of the great river is very strong. It gripped my raft with its hand. Never have I been so much alone. I tried to think of my knowledge, but it was a squirrel's heap of winter nuts. There was no strength in my knowledge any more, and I felt small and naked as a new-hatched bird, alone upon the great river, the servant of the gods. Notice that you have this right here, this little dash. This is not being used in the same sense as the others. This is a compound word, so ignore that. How did the dashes illustrate his sense of foreboding? How are they, or why is it interrupting in a way to give it a sense of dread? You have an appositive, and appositive is a noun or pronoun that is used to identify or describe another noun or a pronoun. It renames something that came before it in the sentence. My oldest sister, Alicia, will be at basketball practice until 6 p.m. My subject is sister, and she's being renamed. Who's your sister? Alicia. Who's Alicia? The sister. Jamaica, a popular island for tourists, is in the Caribbean Sea. Jamaica's a what? A popular island for tourists. What's the popular island for tourists? Jamaica. Notice that the appositive has to come after the word it renames. So I want you to highlight the appositive phrase in the paragraph. Look for a phrase that is renaming something else. And then I want you to tell me, what is the original thing being renamed? It's at the bottom of the paragraph, so look there. Okay, quick write. Write a paragraph that describes a time you felt a sense of foreboding. Remember, that is when something bad is going to happen, and try to recreate that feeling. Don't use the word foreboding in your paragraph. You want to create that tone without actually having to say it. So, this can be the same paragraph that you previously wrote. So if you want to use that, or if you want to move on to a different scenario, you can do that. But now we have to add some additional criteria. In your paragraph, just like last time, add at least 3 words or images and 2 details that create a sense of foreboding. Now I want you to add 2 examples of figurative language. It can be personification, simile, metaphor, or it can be other types of figurative language if you want. That's up to you. You just have to have at least 2. And then add at least 2 of the following devices to your paragraph if you don't have them already. At least 2. You can use repetition, repeating something, a cumulative sentence, periodic sentence. If you don't remember what those are, it's earlier in this lesson. Go back, listen to it, look it up. Parallelism. Remember, parallelism is keeping your sentence, the words in your sentence, following the same pattern. And a positive phrase. So, my sister, Alicia, Jamaica, a popular island for tourists. Or dashes or ellipses. Now, we didn't discuss ellipses. Ellipses is when you leave off a thought. You let a thought trail off and you leave out information. It's 3 dots. You are going to write your paragraph here. And when you are done, if you have Miss Robertson, make sure you close this tab and then hit Submit Assignment. She can't see it if you don't hit Submit Assignment. If you have me, Miss Gann, select Turn In the top corner of Cami. You'll have a drop-down box. Hit Turn In again. I can't see it if you don't submit the assignment.